Conditional love permeating my feet. Let go. Let Goddess. Why not? We got it. If anyone didn't know, that is our younger brother, Ryan Bartlett, aka Regen Ryan, with the sound there. That's Let Go and Let Goddess, one of my favorite songs of his.
Jam.
Give it out. Just giving him a shout out. Go on Spotify or wherever you find music, and he'll be on there. Regen Ryan. So today, this is the podcast number 3 of this season of this podcast, The Same Difference. And the topic today is the self that you haven't met yet.
Let's go. Let's do it. It's a good provoking title.
Yeah.
Here's what I think about
Start
it.
us off, Rand.
Yeah. There's a quote that kind of helped inspire the tagline for the podcast name, and it's an unknown author, and it goes, "Studying philosophy is a conversation between your current self and a future self that has reached their full potential." And it always stuck with me. I write, and I've tagged that quote in there a few times in some of the articles I've written, and it's just powerful way of viewing philosophy. We just think about philosophy as just this like archaic thing that happens in a classroom full of 500 students in a lecture hall, and you're just boringly reciting facts and old historical timelines. But really, when I think about philosophy, that's a good way to articulate it.
Yeah. It's to me, it's like the groundwork of everything in your life, everything that's going to happen to you in your life. You're going to compass some sort of philosophy, either that philosophy that you need to act out in that moment, or someone else is acting out elsewhere. It's like they're like the lessons of the past, the lessons of, ancient wisdom, our teachers, our parents. If you're blessed to have great parents who pass down some great philosophies or principles as when you're a young child, that's very powerful to have. But a lot of us don't have that benefit, and then there's nothing wrong, with the way your parents raise you or our parents raise you, and they instilled some philosophies in us, but
Philosophy is more of like the brain, like you put it on paper. When you were talking, I was thinking like it's like a bite-sized quote that you can capture, and it stands the test of time. It's almost like a philosophy. When I was preparing for this, I was like writing all of the quotes that are stuck in my brain, of like the philosophies from great philosophers. One of my favorites is, "We suffer more in imagination than in reality." That was, do you remember was that Seneca? Yeah, Seneca.
Yeah, Seneca. Yeah.
Ancient Greek philosopher. And it's like, damn, that's stood the test of time. It still hits me. And I think about it all the time too. I still think about that quote now. It's permeated my field, if you will, and it hits my consciousness anytime, like a lot of times throughout the weeks or months, because it'll be like, damn, like how am I suffering in imagination, or I see other people suffering in imagination than in reality. Like, are you actually suffering, or is it in your head? And you can think about that. It's like this dude like said this quote 2,500 years ago, and it's like we think about the brain and therapy and like consciousness and all these like different ways, and we've advanced so much, but this dude understood it, and he didn't need a fucking psychology degree or whatever, psychiatry degree or years of practice. It's like, bam.
Yeah, to me, that quote, it's like what things are in your control and what's out of your control. Most of the things you realize, if you start thinking about what's irritating you in life, it's out of your control, like 99% of things. My wife's a therapist. First couple conversations is usually that. It's like, hey, create a list. And you create the list, and they're like, all right, of that list of what's bothering you at the moment, what's in your control and what's not. So just like having people do that, makes you realize like, oh, damn, like this isn't in my control. Like, why am I even bothered by it? I'm suffering in imagination, more of like what scenarios may happen,
Mm-hmm.
or trying to analyze the past, right? Or what this person may say if we get into an argument again about this subject.
Yeah.
So it's like what's in your control and what's out of your control. You'll see them 9 times out of 10 it's out of your control. And that powerful quote, if you can itch it, that philosophy, itch it in your brain,
Mm-hmm.
in your ethos, then anytime you come up with something and your inner thoughts start to come in or start to tell you things that you should do or avoid, you just think, all right, am I suffering more in my imagination?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. What? So it's easy. There's one thing I wrote down that is there's this whole concept of like practice what you preach. Hey man, you need to. Or, hey chick, you need to practice what you preach. You want to shake them, and it's like philosophy is really like it's something that you're like hoping to be. You're not. Takes a while to practice what you preach, and so like you get into these thought patterns, and we all get into these thought patterns, and we start suffering more in imagination than reality. But then if you can embed philosophy in your brain, so then those thought patterns come up, but positive thought patterns come up like, hey, I'm suffering more in imagination than reality, then you can then begin practicing what you preach. So I say this quote, I establish this quote and I repeat it and I reread it and I think about it and I write about it. Now it's like etched into my consciousness, if like you were mentioning. Now when you get back into that same negative pattern, something else surfaces up. And that's kind of like philosophy in my eyes, where practicing what you preach, like you just put things out there uh until you start becoming what you put out there.
Yeah. It's to me that's why I love quotes, because it helps remind me of those core principles that I want to attain, or that I want to continue to practice what I preach on, those core principles or philosophies that I want to repeat in my life often and often. Not lying, treat others like you want to be treated, all these things. And what you were touching on a little bit of thing, a famous quote by Marcus Aurelius, and he said, "Don't practice your philosophy, embody it." And it's in order to practice what you preach, you can't just say it to people, right? You can't just go around and say, "Hey, you
Yeah.
should not lie, you should not
Mm-hmm.
get angry, or you should be able to control your emotions." But if you're not going out in society and having difficult conversations and then actually embodying that philosophy, or death, right? Death's a big one. So embody the philosophy of being strong or supporting others or being cognizant of your emotions and not taking it out on other people. Embody that philosophy in the moment, in those hardest times. That's where philosophy is the most important. Is don't practice your philosophy, embody it. And you can only do that by trying to practice what you preach,
Mm-hmm.
by getting out there and just, sometimes you'll make mistakes. I thought I was, pretty every so often there's a quote, I forget who says it, but they said if you're not after every single year, if you don't look back on that year and realize how dumb you were the year before, then you haven't learned much,
Yeah. Yeah.
right?
Yeah. Yeah.
To me that's how I think about it, in the same way, because if you subtle reminders, like it can be good for a year, and then I'm in a marriage, but then I have a kid, and then the kid comes in, and then it brings in a whole nother layer of challenges to me practicing my philosophy and embodying
Mm.
it. So then my kid gets in there, and now I'm talking about myself, because then I started to realize, like, damn, I'm not very wise as I thought I was.
Mm-hmm.
I thought I was pretty wise the last few
Yeah.
years.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then I
Yeah.
had a kid, and I'm like, all right, now I need to kick it up an extra notch. My kid got my emotions too high, and then I raised my voice, and then I felt bad about it, and, 5 seconds later.
There
And
was a
yeah,
I listened to a book by Pema Chodron, and she's a famous guru, spiritual teacher, and she's like very calm, cool, and collected, and she talks in a soft tone, and she told a story during the middle of this book, and she's all about meditation, right? And so if you if you thought anybody was like on top of their game at all points and embodying their philosophy, it'd be like someone like Pema Chodron. and she talked about she took her like 9-year-old granddaughter out camping or something, and she like lost her shit at some point, lost her cool, and then she told the story of how she was telling her granddaughter, now don't tell anybody about this when we leave here, like don't tell anybody, because she's a public figure.
Yeah.
And so she didn't want anybody to know that, like, grandma lost her shit and she's supposed to be this wise guru. But yeah, to your point, like it's just very difficult to practice what we preach. But if like we keep repeating it, another thing that popped in my head when you were talking was like, I remember when you were working at your last company and you had a big team and you would share quotes and challenge people to, develop habits and read and that type of stuff. And I remember there was a few parents that would say, tell when you weren't a parent yet, they were basically challenging you and say, yeah, I got kids, you don't understand.
Mhm. Mhm.
And then like you wouldn't be reading and running and doing all these like positive things, embodying your philosophy if you had this. And there's some truth to it, but then you've had 2 kids and you're still doing all of the things, right? And so then it's
Mhm.
like that is a great example of like embodying the philosophy over time, and that's, I guess, a good way to think about it.
Yeah. Because I mean, you look at the most people that that we respect, or most people in society respect, are like people that are authentic. That so if you're talking about being a good person and being virtuous and all these things, or practice what you preach, right?
Mhm.
If you're and a lot of that, if you're being authentic, if you practice what you preach, right?
Mhm.
And
Mhm. Mhm.
that's what people resonate with. So for me, it was like, especially when I was a leader of a team and we're just really trying to spread wisdom and the book club and sharing daily quotes with people and my thoughts around the quotes. And I still share quotes on a daily basis on my Substack. So I'll put it in the show notes if
Yeah.
anybody loves inspiration of daily quotes. And to me, it was just like there was almost it was almost like a fear in my head. Like I didn't want ever to be in that position of someone questioning my authenticity, or questioning like, hey,
Mm.
this guy says he's going to do this, but he's not actually doing it, right?
Yep.
And so it's like, even with kid, and it was almost like I wanted to improve, because I heard that, people would say, oh, you had kids, you don't have enough time, you don't have enough time to do anything.
Yeah.
And it was me having 2 kids. I just want to continue to keep proving people wrong. It's like, so I'll find time to make it work.
Yeah. Yeah. You mentioned one word you mentioned, I was pulling up a quote, was around wisdom, and that like there's like philosophy, you look in the etymology and like what it actually means, and like the Greek word philosophia means love of wisdom, and so that's what philosophy means. And there's a quote by, my dog is whining, so I had to yell. There's a quote by this book I read. It was actually a philosophy book around, it's called The Courage to Be Disliked. And he said, it is strange that philosophy should be something that is discussed using words understood only by specialists, because in its original meaning, philosophy refers to wisdom in itself, not to wisdom itself, but to love of wisdom. And it's the very process of learning what one does not know and arriving at wisdom that is important.
Mm, mm, mm.
And I thought that was cool, because it's like there was something else in another quote where people were talking about how, yeah, it's not just intellectual interest, but passionate engagement. So that's like love of wisdom.
Hmm.
Like this isn't some like intellectual pursuit.
Yeah, passionate engagement, loving wisdom. Yeah. What's that mean to like you in your life? Like, how's
Yeah,
that manifest?
because one of the things that I have always been fond of is finding these quotes from people that lived thousands of years ago.
Hmm.
And there's something about like reading meditations from Marcus Aurelius and just being like continually surprised at what you read, and continually like having aha moments, like, oh shit, yeah, I mean, taking quote and taking highlights and stuff, like, damn, this guy was smart, 2500 years ago, this is insane. And that to me is like a love of wisdom, because then it's like, man, something has stood the test of time that long, then I need to really follow this and put it and build it into my life and make a habit of it and really understand it. And that's kind of how I think about it. And there's some things that happen, and there's patterns too, where like you'll hear something on a podcast, you read in a book, you hear something else, so you've created a pattern of a philosophy that and then you can embody that as well. And
Hmm.
it's all about like self improvement. And then to your point earlier, it's like you add this philosophy. First you read the philosophy, aha moment. Now you like understand it, and then you begin to like retain that knowledge, and then you begin to embody it,
Hmm.
build a habit of it. And then once you embody it, it's like now your kids begin to embody it,
Hmm.
people around you begin to embody it, and then you fucking change the world, man.
Yeah. And then kind of what I was talking about, if you're blessed with parents, that spread you the strong philosophies, and our parents did for sure. But, as a parent myself, I want to take the philosophies that I learned through my childhood and through my young adult life and then take it up a notch, right? And then just set them up with the strongest core philosophies that I have built, especially in the last 10 years, and then really think about, all right, and just kind of sharing it with them. And then if they can start a more complete whole of philosophies, that's why, just like everything, I was journaling a little bit on philosophy, and I was thinking, because religions are similar to philosophies, and then you get people who are like, all right, let's this one religion and whatever they say, that's my core commandments or philosophies or principles that I'm going to follow. And then everything else I'm not going to listen to. Right. That's what you see a lot. And then you see it with ideologies and the like of politics, and where you get the strongest base, or the Greeks call it like your inner citadel, I think is similar in a type like this, where you have a diversity of philosophies that you're taking in. You're pulling in all the strongest points that you resonate with the most, and then applying them. We learned this quote way back from an elementary gym teacher. Treat others like you want to be treated. I remember he had it
Yeah,
up on the wall in the gym.
yeah, Mr. Anders, I think.
Yeah, that
Was
sounds
that
right.
him? Was the guy?
Anders. Yeah, it was like fourth
Something
grade,
along those lines.
third
Yeah,
grade,
yeah.
fourth grade. And that's a very powerful, and it's everyone just, you kind of just gloss over it, right? A
Uh-huh.
lot of times in your life, it's just this, yeah, everyone knows treatment, but are you really doing it? Because if
Yeah,
society really treated others like you want to be treated,
yeah.
society we'd be in a much different, less divisive society right now if people actually did that. But I was looking up that quote, and who first talked about it was Confucius. I think that's how you pronounce his name, that
Funny
Chinese
enough,
philosopher.
I just pulled up a ChatGPT question of the same thing. It says Confucius is on here in 500 BC,
Hmm.
but then it mentions ancient Egypt. It said in the instruction of Ptah Hotep, a wisdom text, you can find guidance along the lines of not doing to others what you would dislike. And then yeah, Confucius, I'm sure you have
It
the
was
quote.
probably one of the first philosophy realizations in our species, right? You develop the brain power, you
Yeah,
develop the brain power to start understanding. Obviously, you did that for your little tribe that you had,
yeah,
for hunter gatherers or whatever, in your little tribe that you were in. Obviously, you did it because it only made sense. But maybe some people, you still have people getting out of hand. But when you started to build the tribe a little bit beyond your just intermediate family
hmm,
and the likes, that's when it really kicked in. And that was to me, I'm thinking that was probably one of the first philosophies ever. Just
yeah,
treat others like you want to be treated.
yeah, yeah. It's like evolutionary wired.
Hmm.
Treat others like you want to be treated. It's like we reciprocate how we're treated, and that's one thing that's interesting is that like I talked about it in a linear way of like you embodied philosophy was like step 3, but it actually could be step 1 in this case. Like
Mm,
it was embodied,
mm,
and then
mm.
we articulated it, and then wrote it on paper,
Yeah,
and then
that's definitely what it was. Yeah.
and then
That makes
talked
sense.
about it afterward, which is, see, if we're in a small community, which what we naturally were, of 150 people or less, you don't even need to communicate with words. You don't even need philosophy in the written way. You just
Mm-hmm.
embody it, and everybody embodies the philosophy.
Mm-hmm.
And but then once you start to scale, then there's a lot of influences, and so then you need to like write things down, or that's one of the attempts of religion is to
Yeah.
have a doctrine, and you follow the doctrine, you follow the philosophy, and then but then even religions are victims of other influences, people and society and media and all of the things.
They say that's the golden rule. Paul Chek said, "Treat others like you want to be treated." That's the golden rule. He said this the silver rule was uh, don't do to yourself as you would have others do to you. Essentially, respect yourself the same way you hope others would respect you, or treat you. So like,
It's like an
kind of like
internal,
yeah, like shaming yourself
yeah,
and those type of things.
that's a good one.
That's another
That's a
good
good
one.
one.
Yeah. So it's like the
Yeah, that's
golden
really good.
rule: treat others like you want to be treated, and then treat yourself like you'd want others to treat you.
Mm, that's a good one.
Pretty powerful, like golden and silver rule. But I mean,
Yeah.
think about that. Like, stop, and if you're listening to this, like, try to truly embody that philosophy on a daily basis. Think about it, and try and think about it once per day. If you thought about that, the golden rule and the silver rule, if you thought about those two and just
I think
left
I'm gonna
out
write them
everything
both
else.
down myself because I need to embody them more.
Oh,
I
for
think I'm gonna
sure.
put them up here. I
I
have a
know.
few. I have like four different quotes sent up here of things I like, trying to embody. But real quick on the religion and thing is like this is one of the things I have wrote down too is that like religion is a form of philosophy. But then similar to religion, similar to anything, I was thinking about philosophy and like and I thought about ideology as well, and I'm like, where philosophy goes wrong when you know it's gone wrong is when it turns into ideology.
Mm-hmm.
It turns into this dogmatic thing that
Mm-hmm.
like isn't open to other ideas.
Yeah, because when you close it off, then you stop that love of wisdom that you were talking about earlier,
Yeah,
that
it's a great
quote.
point
You
because
lose the love of wisdom.
and the love of wisdom is assuming ignorance,
Mm-hmm.
and yeah, yeah. There's a quote that ignorance. Let's see if I had it. Damn it, I don't think I wrote it down. There's a quote by what's his face, French philosopher Montaigne about ignorance. It's something along the lines of like the measure of a fool is someone who like claims to understand a topic to its full totality or something like that.
Yeah,
Something
yeah.
along those lines. I'm butchering the hell out of it.
I mean, it's similar to like the more you learn, the more you realize you don't know the
Mm-hmm.
full, it's similar to that. I think it was one of the Greeks and then Einstein repeated it. I think Aristotle or one of the Greeks said it, and I'm sure they learn it from someone else before because
Someone's yeah,
the
yeah.
reason they keep coming through as some of the most intelligent people and being told over and over again, you see these quotes repeated in different ways and restructured, but these are like strong core principles of life that we keep learning in each uh each new, you get the millennials and the boomers and and they keep going each decade, each century, we just keep learning these core principles and they keep transferring on.
Yeah, I guess that's the going back to what I was mentioning, like pattern recognition. Like if things become a pattern, then there's probably something to it.
Mm-hmm.
And if Einstein mentions it, what's crazy is like I come to these, eureka moments or whatever myself, and then realize later that it wasn't a eureka moment. Someone else smart figured this out, or
Yeah.
uh, that happens all the time, and I'm sure it happens to other people where like, who knows, like maybe Einstein came to to his own conclusions and learnings throughout life. And that's one cool thing about philosophy is that like uh you can learn from these people that have already lived it, you know. You can already establish. It's hard to tell what's ideology and philosophy sometimes,
Mm-hmm.
and what could be propaganda and whatnot, or like if someone's misguided and they're portraying this philosophy. But if you can hone in on like something that is like the golden rule, and it's like that should be embodied to the nth degree.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because you could get a religion or an ideology that will have this dogmatic thing that loses, and it gets a little shaky around, um, some things that maybe aren't acceptable in the old scripture or in this new ideology. It's not acceptable in the current zeitgeist or the current culture, right? If it's said, it's like, it's a taboo. This person should be shamed, and so it's like you
Yeah.
can, in both areas, it can go haywire. I think I was thinking, about philosophy, and I think like what's its benefit, and like why does everybody keep coming back to, and science is kind of like a philosophy in its way too. Science is about discovering new things, never being dogmatic, questioning everything. That's science, right? And that's kind of like philosophy, right? It's always seeking wisdom. And to me, like philosophy, as human beings, we've developed and our society's developed. We have all this technology and we have all these things. A lot of people talk about this in books and, throughout time, but like we're not built for all these distractions, all these emotional things that tie us in, all this media that's trying to influence our thought patterns, trying to distract us out of our core principles. And we can get easily manipulated by simple things like our food. It's built to increase dopamine because with sugar and salt and all these things. And then the media's sound bites
Phones.
everywhere. It's trying to get that dopamine hit, get our
Yeah.
emotions up. So all these things in life are built around currently in society now. And if you read Marcus Aurelius and some others, it was pretty similar in ways. I mean, we have a lot more in today's time, but that's what philosophy does. It protects you. It's not it's not 100% in the protection. It's always gonna you're always gonna fall victim to some charlatan out there that tricks you into maybe start to follow and then until you realize it. But it protects you from all these things if you have like some core philosophy that you follow, right? And I think
Yeah.
that's the most important thing in philosophy. It's like if something goes haywire, that my emotions are high, where am I going to fall back to? What's my home base? What principles do I, am I, if I tell myself I'm a good person who doesn't lie, I treat others like I want to be treated, I seek love first, I'm kind to myself, because if you're not kind to yourself, you're not kind to others. I don't gossip, I cut gossiping out, because then all these things, if your kids see you doing it, what are they going to do? They're going to
Yeah,
repeat it,
exactly.
and then it goes down through things. So to me, that's what philosophy does. When things go wrong, and and you can be easily manipulated in high emotional states or in media or food or any of those, like we can be easily manipulated out of. But if you have a strong foundation, whether it's religion, philosophy, just any kind of core principles, strong foundation of beliefs, I think it can help you get through it without being
Oh,
manipulated.
100%. When you were talking about that and you were talking about like, let's say media. So one of the things I wrote down is that ideas change the world, and philosophy is like discussing ideas, and and you constantly see it, especially in society today, where we thought that like the internet, social media, all of this information would be like a great thing for society. We become more knowledgeable. You have deep access to everything, but it's also like proliferation of ideas, bad and good. And so like when you were talking about that, of like protecting yourself, and let's say you go on social media, there's an inordinate amount of trash on there that isn't in normal life. So if you surround yourself by that, you will begin to embody it and lose your philosophy. It'll be difficult for your philosophy to protect you, and if you keep succumbing to those environments where all these other bad ideas are out there. But in the positive sense, you can also go in those avenues and push out the good ideas and literally change the world. One of the things that shifted my perspective was there's a book called The Better Angels of Our Nature, and it basically gets into like why humans are violent, have been violent, not why they are, but why they become violent, and why it's tapered and it's declined over time. One of the things in there that I hadn't thought about as a hypothesis was like ideas, whether it's books, when the creation of books, the printing press, music, different genres of music, different genres of like TV and movies,
Like they can change a
radio.
culture. Is that what you're talking about? Yeah.
Change a culture. And so like really with more information comes more reason for why you need a philosophy to protect you.
Greater responsibility. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Spider-Man.
Oh, 100%. It and yeah, that's what I was thinking about when you're going into it.
Yeah. We just had this I was thinking about whether or not bring this up, but in the last week, but we recently had the Charlie Kirk situation, the murder assassination, and I was really perplexed at just the response of it. A man gets shot on public television, or on social media, and it spreads like wildfire. My niece and nephew saw it. They're like 11,
Really?
11 and 13.
Yeah.
And it's like, or one of them's about to turn 11, 10 years old. And I'm sure younger kids saw it.
And they probably listened to him.
Yeah. And, it's this real gruesome thing. This man got his life taken from him. And he spread similar type of philosophy, strong core philosophies that are good for the youth. And, there's a couple, and what rubbed me the wrong way is just the response from certain people that celebrated. That really was repulsive. That was one of the most repulsive things. And it wasn't just 5 people. I mean, it was thousands of people celebrating a man that just left his widow wife with 2
young children,
like a 2 and 4-year-old daughters.
Yeah.
And, just the most horrific thing you can think of, and to how someone could, and I was thinking about this for every day. I probably thought about for every day for a week, thinking like,
I've thought about it too.
What in the heck would cause someone to immediately go to, rather than being empathetic and thinking, what can they do? Yeah, grieving for this person and his family. They go to his political beliefs, or what he may have said or what he may have not said. A lot of things that people report on there, they didn't have the full context of what he even say. But ignore all that to me.
Yeah.
It's more just like, how are you responding in this high emotional time? You're responding and you're celebrating, and it seemed normalized. So the way I look at it is like, who you surround yourself with. We talked about this in podcast 1. Who you surround yourself with, the 5 people you surround yourself, you're the average of those people. So if you're surrounding yourself, I don't think those folks are surrounding themselves with people that have strong principles, that have a strong philosophy. And even beyond the celebration, there was thousands of people that would immediately went, I don't condone violence, but, right? I've seen many of these. I don't condone violence, but here's one thing that he said in 2019. Shit you not. I've seen several of these. Here's one thing he said in 2019, and I don't agree with that. Wow. I'm just thinking like, what?
Yeah.
This man, we haven't even found the killer yet. This man just left 2 daughters and a wife, and when my first thoughts, I cried for him and his family. I cried. It was like one of the first. That was my reaction.
And to be clear, like, you don't even listen to him or anything.
I've seen maybe 10 short videos of him, probably
before this happened.
Before this, yeah. And they were like 2 to 3 minute sound bites, maybe,
Yeah.
So like, and I think I would have had that same response if it was anybody I disliked, right? I think I'd had a very similar response, and unless this person was a murderer, you know,
Yeah.
and then I would maybe
Yeah.
have a little bit less response. But like, this guy was not a murderer,
Yeah.
you know.
So you asked like how could this happen, and it's like you just mentioned when something would be justified for you. When it'd be justified for you is if like this someone was like it's eye for an eye type thing, right? Like this person was a murderer.
Maybe, you know, I was
Right.
just trying to think of like maybe what would cause me to.
Right.
I don't know if I ever could celebrate a death, but
But what I'm saying
you
is like
know,
people are justifying it in their brain
yeah, yeah,
because
yeah,
because he's an X, he's a Y, he's a Z, he's a yada yada yada.
yeah.
And to me, like this, we just talked about this. It was just like when philosophy goes wrong, when it turns into ideology, and ideology is like this, it's a strong belief, and that excludes all other ideas. And then and what happens, this is the problem with like the social media, is like you become entrenched in these ideas. I would bet you $1,000 that if we gathered everybody on the internet, or sorry, we gathered everyone who knows about this, and then we segmented the population and said how much time you spend on the internet. There, the more people in social media, probably the real question. The more time you spend on the internet, the worse your reaction is to the Charlie Kirk shooting. And so if like you spend more time on the internet, it's highly correlated with you having a like inhumane response. The less time you spend on social media, the more you have a more human response, which like you should. Yeah, that should be a signal. To me, I thought about this a lot too, and I was thinking, you know, if you responded to this, a good sign that you've been radicalized is if you become inhumane in your response to a murder, you know.
Spot
And
on.
yeah, this is why we should like positive philosophy and should go out there. It's like how do you respond in these moments?
Yeah, yeah. You really need to take a look in the mirror and think about where have I gone wrong. And this is what the great philosophers have did. This was the questions they asked themselves, right? The Greeks and before them, the Egyptians, Confucius, and the Chinese philosophers, man and woman have been doing this for many years before this. And it's like when things go wrong, you got to really stop back and reflect, right? All right, what were my core principles? Treat others like you want to be treated. La da 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 da. Do all
You,
these.
you know what? Here's a perfect signal for this is that once those people are inhumane, it became public, and the organization they're part of heard of it. These organizational people aren't ideological, right? 99% of them aren't ideological. So these organizations find out about it, like, oh no, that's not a philosophy that I want to be attached to, this ideology. So you're getting fired. And so a lot of people have been fired from their jobs after it's
Thousands, man.
become public.
It's insane. It's
And to
insane.
me, that's a signal of like you've become radicalized, you've aligned to an ideology. Now that's gotten out into the public to people that follow a different philosophy, probably a better one, and they've disagreed with you, and they don't want to be a part of that. And here's the thing, is like we were talking about like going back to tribal times, 150 people, you wouldn't be able to act like that. You know, you act like that,
You'd be
it'd
out
be
of the tribe.
corrected. It'd be
Yeah.
corrected immediately.
Yeah.
So like in the world of I don't want to praise someone getting fired, but it's a self-correcting mechanism of like humans. It's like this is not the reciprocation of behavior. This is not how I would want someone. The silver rule is what you called it, right? This is not how I'd want someone to treat me.
Yeah. Yeah.
So you're not going to be in my tribe. I'm going to exclude you from my tribe. I don't want to be far from that. And that's what these companies have done to these people, and they're all upset about it, and they don't understand why. And it's like you gotta have some self-reflection and figure out like why aren't you aligning? Where have you kind of gone wrong
Yeah, but it's time for reflection. It's time to think about,
for a new philosophy?
Yeah, we had new philosophy, and that's what ideologies do. They lead you sway from like and you get caught up in your little echo chamber of this ideology, and you forget the foundational thing, and it's easy to do. I know I've been victim from it, especially in my early years of life. So it's
Definitely not immune to it. It's every when you're talking about it's the hero's journey every time. Like
yeah,
it's Pinocchio, and you have somebody in the shadows, and they're trying to lure him in, right, and get him to do the bad things, and then they overcome it, and it's just this hero's journey. And so if you look at it as a hero's journey, that's a good philosophy. I'm approaching it. This is a bump on my road, but I'm aspiring to be this.
I'm going to apologize. I'm going to accept it. I'm going to be authentic in this.
Just like I do with my daughter when I yell at her,
Yeah.
grab her, and
Yeah.
once I go back to it, I apologize for exactly what I did, and I've learned that from listening to people and other fathers and stuff.
You shared a quote, one of my favorite quotes from Epictetus. It says, "If someone succeeds in provoking you, realize your mind is complicit in the provocation." So it's like a lot of times we get all upset about something, and then us getting upset, we're complicit in us getting upset. We don't need to know. There's no word or language or something someone can say or do that should set me off into a tirade of emotion and taking it out on other people, because all that's going to do is just make me look bad. I'm not going to be able to embody my philosophies very well. And I think it could lead you into a circumstance where you're getting fired because you posted and you weren't able to. And a lot of times it's like pausing. A lot of the great presidents, I think Abe Lincoln did this, Harry Truman did this, a lot of famous presidents and folks of just like pausing, writing the letter down first, or typing out the email, or typing out the tweet, and just pausing, and then maybe just waiting an hour. And like, if you still want to send it, then maybe send it. But if not, Thomas Jefferson and John Adams, they found a lot of
I remember Lincoln used to put it in his drawer, because then they have those letters and you can talk about it nowadays.
Yeah, there was one on John Adams' biography where he like went nuts. He was just writing like 2 or 3 pages, just went nuts and stuffed it in the drawer. He's like, "Nah, I'm not gonna send it." But then we have that evidence of him going nuts in his head, but he wrote it down.
Yeah, that's fucking great.
Yeah, so like pausing, that was a good one.
Yeah. One thing, I was looking at some of my notes that I took, and there's stories can be like a way to communicate embodied philosophy. And some that popped in my head was like, you remember the story of Ben Franklin when his house caught on fire?
Oh, incredible. Tell that story. Yeah. That's an incredible story.
So Ben Franklin's house caught on fires, and he hurries up and he gets all his family out of the house, and they're standing there and they're watching it. And he's like, starts laughing.
And it's like, it has all of his experiments in it. This guy's got so many inventions, like so many patents in there and documents.
Yeah. And then I think this is how I remember it. Who knows what the details, and this is like passed on for generations. But then he looks at his like children and like gathers them and says, no, this is a once in a lifetime chance to, so let's watch this and be grateful. Like, we're not in it.
Yeah.
That type of thinking. And that's an insane story of someone high emotional state embodying a philosophy that like, this is out of my control. We suffer more in imagination than we do in reality, and that's a good story. Another one similar to that was Zeno. He's one of like the OGs of philosophy in general, of like, that we're familiar with, like Stoicism. Zeno, ancient Greek philosopher, and he had everything on his ship, all his belongings. I don't know where the hell he was going, but he had like all his belongings. In those times, you probably have just like all your luggage and all the things you own and the gold and all your wealth. Ship sinks. He went from like one of the wealthiest people in Greece to like the poorest, because it just sunk everything. And he went on to, I can't remember at the timing of it, but he was like one of the creators of Stoicism that became very popular. Marcus Aurelius and Roman times followed. And so those are like 2 stories that stood out to me, where through storytelling we can communicate in a philosophy that you should embody by telling stories about people that have embodied the philosophy, and those resonate a lot better. So that's a
Yeah. Yeah, I had down stories as being just the stories of other people, right? You know, you read a lot in the books, you know, it's talking about John Adams and them and their biographies. And in our first, we talked about like Goggins mindset. Goggins is a philosophy in itself. It helped me like power through a lot of things in my life, be extra more disciplined,
100%.
dig in more to my own core mind and how I can avoid being influenced by external things. You know, that's kind of the Goggins philosophy.
Real quick on the Goggins one.
Yeah, go
I was
ahead.
talking, one thing that surprised me was I have 3 people on my team that based out of India, and there's this one guy who I don't know what age he is, probably early 30s. Hell, he might be my age, but he's lives in Bangalore, and we got to talking, chit chatting and stuff. And Goggins brought up, asked me if I listen to Goggins. Like, wait, you listen to Goggins? You listen to Goggins? And he read his books and stuff, and he's like, and he was talking about how in Bangalore, it's like a major city in India. They have like gym culture is pretty popular there. He was saying, and a decent amount of people listen to Goggins.
Okay, that's pretty cool.
So it's an awesome way of like he's prototypical example of someone embodying a philosophy, and this is a strong philosophy.
Stay hard.
This would be comparable to someone. That'd be comparable to a monk. You know.
Oh, yeah. Oh, for
Like
sure. That's monk-like, no doubt.
And so he's like monk-like in embodying his philosophy, like to an nth degree. He practices what he preaches,
And
so
inspiring
you could
millions and millions of folks
over the world.
Yeah, yeah. In India, that's crazy.
Yeah.
And one thing that I wrote down, we both read the book The Boy Crisis, and to me, I think that's and that book was all centered around boys without fathers in every aspect of their life, that when they don't grow up with fathers or two parents in the household, but you know, a father-like figure in the household, things just start going, you know, they go to jail more, they don't graduate high school as much, they get more fights, ADD is higher, all these things just over and over and over. And it's like high percentages, 30 to 50%, incredible percentage of increase when a father's not. You know, Goggins didn't have a father in the household, and he had to learn this stuff himself, and he didn't learn it until he became a man and started to instill some of his own philosophies. And to me, that's what it is. It's like the mom has her strong core philosophies, but they're more on the caring side, treat others like you want to be treated, but you still need some of the, you know, some of the more, you know, generalized term of like a masculine type of philosophy.
Discipline.
Yeah, some discipline.
We're talking in generalities, of course, but
yeah. It's like, to me, that's the reason, because they don't have this strong, they don't have the full diverse, if we're going back to when we were talking about earlier, the full diverse portfolio of many philosophies, that other half of philosophy of some of those disciplines and some of these emotional stability disciplines and philosophies that you really need, especially when you're going through
2 philosophies
adolescence.
is better than one.
Yeah.
And that's break it down to that.
Yeah.
Like, so you 2 parents in the household, and you're gonna have a better. And who knows? Maybe this is why like cultures where they have like families all staying together, and maybe there's some evidence there where like there's a bunch of you have even more philosophies, right? And even more than one. Because there's a concept of like what's it called? Like I can't remember what it's called, like the second father or something along those lines. So you have your typical father, and then you have like this like archetypical father archetype outside that like helps mentor you and drives you. And so like that to me is like another philosophy that can come in and help you. And the more times you hear something, obviously the better you're going to retain it and embody it. So yeah, that's obviously important. That's one of the things I wrote, was like philosophy is a mentor.
Yeah, for sure.
And so the more times you hear it, the more mentors you hear, the more you're gonna, and in the opposite way as well, back to the same discussion we're having, like if you're constantly hearing and seeing trash, you're gonna start embodying it even if you don't even know it. That's one of the biggest problems, is
that's the effectiveness of propaganda if you're watching media and
yeah.
you may be getting propagandized by a philosophy
It
that you don't
works
want, or an ideology that's not for your benefit in life.
100%. And yeah, we got to make sure our kids. Kanye would talk about this before Kanye went bad, and I'll put in air quotes.
Yeah.
He would talk about this about which I think this is in his Jesus King album, but he's talked about like protecting your children because he's talking about protecting his children. He's so worried about the influences of society on his children, and he's like, hold your daughters, something, something. And talking about how like we need to protect them. And he was talking about the gospel, protect them with the gospel, which is a philosophy, you know?
Yeah. I mean, kids are the most vulnerable to these evils, to these ideologies. I mean, children are the most vulnerable, so they should be protected with the strong core philosophies early on.
Yep.
There was what was I want to talk about this. So like contemplation of death is kind of like a philosophy that's built into every single religion. And I know you have this quote, and I have it too up here. It's like Marcus Aurelius, you could leave life right now, let that determine what you do, say, and think. And it's like you could, in the Greeks, memento mori was the thing. You could leave life right now. And every single religion, you look at every single one, they had this same type of philosophy of thinking about death, owning your own mortality. You could die at any moment. Anyone in your close circle could die at any moment. And it was really just contemplating. This is like one of the oldest philosophies of mankind. And when you go through death, you realize how powerful a philosophy around, like, if you aren't practicing that and you avoid talking about death and you avoid interacting with it, and that's really gonna set you up for a weak response when that inevitably does happen, when your dog passes, your significant other, your mother, father.
That's a great point.
You're not gonna. So, like, to me, there's a reason every single religion in society practiced this philosophy of contemplating death for yourself and others, was to build up a strong defense system, or just system to be able to handle it, because it's such a high emotional time.
Yeah. It's the same thing you talked about earlier. It's like it's a philosophy that protects you from a high, and this is the highest emotional time, you know? And it's built into our society, and we don't really think about it, though, like in rituals, like a funeral. It's a way to come together and think about it.
Yeah.
Some cultures, a funeral lasts a week. Well, heck, even in our culture, right? Like you have at least last 2 days from the wake and then the funeral the next day, if you do it in a traditional way. But then, as we've experienced death in our family with two of our aunts, and it's like it's way more than a day. Like, you're, depending on what their situation was, you're like, they're at the end of life care, and so you kind of see it and then you experience it, and then there's like follow up to that. And the other one was a gravestone,
Yeah.
is a way to contemplate death. And then we see them all the time, right? We drive by them and they're everywhere. But just having a graveyard to memorialize, and then to contemplate death. But we don't think about it in that
the Sufis would, the grave sites, and just like reading the names. And I do that from time to time.
I do that sometimes.
I'll go on runs and I'll stop in and I'm just reading these gemstones and thinking of, like, who was this Malcolm Smith guy, that lived in 1792, or, to this, and just thinking about it. And then you'll see the kid gravestones and it'll really hit you in the soul. And there's nothing more powerful than that to help you, like, have more urgency in your life, take more action in your life, practice these strong core philosophies in your life, and try and spread this goodness to your kin, and then maybe further out into society, and just make the whole world a better place.
Yeah, I love it. We went camping, and there was this, I think it was like Northwest Illinois, or maybe we're in Wisconsin, and we're out in the country, and there was a really old graveyard. Some of the graves were so old that, like, the weather, they've been weathered so much that you couldn't even tell the name on it anymore. And there was like some where they were born like in the 1800s, you know,
Mm-hmm.
and like you would see, it always hits me in the soul when I see the younger they get, and I'm
Yeah.
almost like looking for it too.
Yeah.
When I'm looking around, I'm almost looking for like a husband and a wife side by side, and one of them passed like way before, and I'm just trying to like think about that. Yeah, it's really powerful. I notice we're probably coming up on time here in a few, and I was going through and I wanted to, there's a few philosophers that we haven't mentioned that I'm really fond of, like Alan Watts really impacted my life.
Yeah, he's one of the greatest philosophers on it. Go on YouTube and put in some Alan Watts. Just watch like a 5 to 10 minute one, and just every single time I've listened to his videos hundreds of times, lectures, read a few of his books, but every single time I listen to it makes me, going back to what you were talking about earlier, it makes me really think of like, oh wow, have that like epiphany moment about
Yeah,
my own
yeah.
internal vision of life or my own philosophies.
Yeah, that's one of the things like with philosophy, you should be questioning, it should provoke you to question what you know or the
Mm-hmm.
way you live. That's a good way of thinking about it. And his constantly like, there's some that I listen to. There's this one on Spotify, like 6.5 minutes. We can add it in the show notes, but every time I listen to it, this thing's 6.5 minutes. You know, it's not that long. Every time I learn something new,
Mm-hmm.
which is crazy
Mm-hmm.
because it's deep, man. It's so deep. Another person like that is Ram Dass,
Yeah.
or Richard Albert, formerly known as,
Mm-hmm.
and he's another one where if you want to get into any self-reflection, spirituality, he's somebody that will take you into a deep realm of thought-provoking, and you'll start beginning to change who you are. So Alan Watts, Ram Dass, both are two in that realm where like they brought a lot of like Eastern philosophy to the West,
Mm-hmm.
and again it created that diversity of ideas, and so that those are two big ones. And then you have the greats. Socrates was one of the greats.
Asking
Died
why
for
about everything.
the Socratic method is exactly that.
Having open discussion, around debating things, and just it don't matter what you believe. Let's talk about it in an open forum.
I started reading Plato's Dialogues,
Yeah.
and basically Plato, so Socrates never wrote anything down, and that was actually part of his philosophy. Was he wanted in a conversation, it's more dynamic and you can adapt. So his whole philosophy was the more you know, the more you don't know. And so like he was constantly on that love of wisdom. And so if you write something down, then it like sets it down as like this fact type thing. And he didn't want that
Mm-hmm.
because he knows he's going to change his mind, the love of wisdom concept, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so then thankfully Plato started writing these down, and he wrote these Plato's Dialogues, and I'm only a little bit through, and I've read a few of like the essays, I guess, if you will. And the way he wrote it was in a dialogue form because of Socrates talked in these dialogue forms. So dialogue, like Socrates would go into the city, the common areas, and have conversations with like people who would be these sophists or these people talking to groups of people and lecturers and those. And Plato's basically reconstructed these conversations that he's heard because Socrates was Plato's mentor, and so in Plato's dialogues, like most of the dialogue, some of them are not Socrates, but Socrates is the main character in a lot of these. And the one I was reading last night was on virtue, like what is virtue, and so this guy was like, it's conversation dialogue between Socrates and this like philosopher at that time talking about virtue. And he basically made this person feel like an idiot, and that's what he constantly did to people, because he would ask them like, so what is, in a more sophisticated way, he would ask them like, what does virtue mean? And then he would ask a couple more questions, the Socratic method, to show them that they don't know what virtue means.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so then like their whole premise, they started with like, their whole premise of whatever their philosophy was based off a word virtue that they don't even understand. And then they would left pissed off, in this whole thing. But he was devoted to making to the love of wisdom. Like that's wisdom when you actually you know what it is, versus like we're constantly in these sharing ideas, and we've probably done it 50 times already in this conversation. We've said things that we really don't mean. If someone else, a third person, was over here asking, so what the hell do you mean by that? Like, actually, I don't even know. I need to think deeply. And that was Socrates. So that was another one.
Yeah, you talked about people or philosophies, books, and I think that's what I love about books, and quotes are similar in books, just a more extrapolated version of a quote or many quotes, and it just helps you remind yourself, because we keep going through these millennia of learning the same things in different ways, because you have different cultures, right? But
Yep.
like a couple that's like more new age, that are the Four Agreements by Don Uriz. He took wisdom from the Toltecs. It was like a tribe in South America, I believe. He four things, the Four Agreements that they talked about were: be impeccable with your word. So being, everything you say, don't gossip, going back to the silver rule, don't be mean to yourself internally, don't doubt yourself, be impeccable with your word. Every single word that you have, be impeccable with it. Don't criticize that man who just got shot and lost his family and had a bunch of people that loved him. Don't take anything personally was another one. That's me. Like these four, I put it on. That's what this frame up here behind me is. Just try to, like, if I can remember these four agreements, that'd be very powerful philosophy for me. And if I could pass it down to my kids: don't take anything personally. Don't make assumptions. That's the biggest problem in any argument, is we're making assumptions about someone's intent or the way they mean things. Language gets so misconstrued. And then always do your best in everything you do. So those are the four agreements.
Yeah, the make assumptions one's basically Hanlon's razor, and
yep,
to a certain degree.
Yeah.
Don't assume a malice, and a lot of people get into that kind of negative think talk.
Mm-hmm. And then there's one other one I put up, Jordan Peterson's 12 Rules for Life, and whatever you think about him, and same goes for religions. That's the power of diversity of philosophy. It's like, even if you don't like some religion, there's put a lot of wisdom in there, probably, because it's been that's the only reason it's been here for thousands of years.
100%.
But one of his, and this really irks me, because I used, in my young adulthood, would gossip and fall victim to some of that. And Rule 6: set your house in perfect order before you criticize the world. Right? It's like, anytime you go to criticize someone else about something that you're doing, like, you better be perfect. Your house better be in perfect order, or you don't have the right to criticize anyone.
Yeah.
And it's like, you know what that means? Like, no one's house is in perfect order, so you shouldn't even be criticizing.
Yeah.
Right. So that's like and that's where people get so caught up in the media and these ideologies, and they always fall victim to that, I think. And you go immediately to criticizing, but it's like criticizing someone for their take or like their past. But it's like, you better have an impeccable past if you're criticizing for someone for making a mistake.
100%. 100%. There's a few others quotes that are, so I wrote down like the ones that came to mind, which means they stuck with me, right? So I wanted to like do that. And there's one from Jordan Peterson, since you mentioned him, and he says, "What's the meaning of life? It's the meaning that reveals itself when you take maximal responsibility." And that one hit me in the heart, hit me right in the soul when I heard that, because I started just reflecting on my life and like, where am I not taking maximal responsibility? And it's like impossible to that quote basically means it's impossible to practice what you preach to a certain extent. Like, you're always trying to aspire to that, but you could probably never get there. But it's powerful.
Yeah, if you think about where in your life can you take more responsibility, and then you're going to get more meaning in life by doing that. Even if it's just
100%.
Even if it's just, in Jordan Peterson, but even if it's just making your bed, that's the first responsibility that you're building up. or if it's taking more responsibilities with your children. I was having a conversation with a person yesterday, and the male in the family didn't do it, the wife at all, when it come to bedtime routines, kids waking up in the middle of the night all the time. The mom was doing it both for both kids, and they all woke up like once or twice in the night each night. So the
Wow.
mom's just, you know, and it's like, man, you need to take more responsibility because you're lacking meaning. I'm sure. I'm sure you're lacking meaning with the relationships that you had with your kids, with your wife. So like, take more responsibility. And you can just extrapolate it on all throughout life. It's a powerful quote. There, I wanted you to touch on one of the Jordan Peterson quote around the aim, because I think we could probably just end it with that one, because that's a very powerful one. Because
Yeah,
I think that one is like a good summary of like why aiming for a strong philosophy or strong principles or a virtuous life is very, very important.
I wanna get like the quote, and let me see if I can give me like 20 seconds to see if I can pull the quote from him, and then if I can't, yeah, here we go, perfect. Thank God I saved quotes in my notes. So he says, if you orient your aim upward in the highest manner, the spirit that informs your thought will be the spirit of the highest possible aim. And the other one is, your aim determines the content of your thoughts. Your thoughts are the handmaiden of your aim. And so to me, what that means is, like, one example he gave is, let's say you get in a quick tit for tat with your significant other, and if your aim is to beat your wife or your husband or whoever, then those thoughts will come up. But if your aim is to be cordial, if you have a philosophy of like, no, I want to spread love no matter what, then those thoughts will come. And you could take that everywhere in life, where this is why the power of intention is so powerful, where like people kind of poke fun at that. I think it was Oprah who talked about, there was like a book that Oprah was involved with, can't remember the name of it.
Yeah.
But
The Secret.
The Secret.
Yeah.
And people make fun of it, but if you break it down to its core, and this is why, like, if you break it down to its core, you will create an environment to where the thoughts will generate towards you becoming a better person. And it's the same with philosophy. Like, if you have a philosophy, and this, like, repeat this philosophy, thoughts will come up to meet that aim.
Your aim determines the content of your thoughts.
Yeah.
It's very, very powerful thing.
Yeah.
Of like, take all this and start aiming higher. Start aiming to be a more virtuous, a more understanding husband, more, a higher emotionally intelligent person, a more caring, treat others like you want to be treated. Start aiming higher, and start to be a better example for the rest of society.
And you can just write it down, talk about it, put it up on the wall, and I think then it will start becoming an aim, and you'll start having thoughts about it, and you'll start practicing what you preach.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's
a great way to end it, I think. That's philosophy in a nutshell. It's over. We don't have to talk anything about it.
Yeah, we're good.
Yeah. Good stuff.
Cool.
We can end it there. Appreciate for joining us for episode 3.
Cheers,
Later.
everybody.